There's a fundamental truth about the SCP Foundation that most people never fully understand. It's not just about monsters in cages. It's not about ghosts in jars or eldritch horrors locked in underground bunkers. No, the real horror is the things we thought we understood. The laws of physics, the fabric of reality, the boundaries between life and death. The things that, if broken, can never be fixed. And the worst part? Somebody always breaks them anyway. SCP-2498. That's what they call it now. It used to have a name. Arjun Ramakrishna Rao, an MTF specialist, a brilliant mind, a man who spent decades studying the paranormal, investigating mind-bending phenomena and laughing in the face of madness, until he became one, until he stopped being human, until he turned into something that should not exist. Officially, SCP-2498 is neutralized, which is a polite way of saying, we have no goddamn idea what happened to him. The Foundation did what it always does when something gets out of hand. They locked it away and poured concrete over it. The remains of SCP-2498's containment site, a dusty, half-forgotten basement buried beneath Andhra Pradesh University, are now adjunct Site 2498. Nobody stays there for more than 240 hours a year. Nobody goes into the basement. Nobody talks to what's left of him, because what's left of him is still talking. Here's where things get fun. SCP-2498 was once a human. A man. A voluntary test subject for something called Project Rainbow Body, a Foundation experiment designed to unlock remote viewing abilities for intelligence gathering. The goal was simple. Create psychics, weapons that could see across continents, infiltrate minds, gather secrets without ever leaving the room. The process? Well, let's just say it involved a lot of drugs, a lot of sensory deprivation, and a lot of screaming. And Arjun Rao? He was the perfect candidate. Decades of training. A mind like a steel trap. The kind of mental fortitude that could stare into the abyss and make the abyss blink first. He was supposed to be the greatest success story of Project Rainbow Body. Instead, he became the last one. February 12th, 1988. Nobody knows why he did it. Maybe he was pushing himself too far. Maybe he was looking for something. Or maybe, just maybe, something was looking for him. What we do know is this. At 4 a.m, Arjun Rao went under one last time. Alone. No sedatives, no supervision. Just himself, the dark and the whispering static in his head. He left his body just like he had before. But this time he didn't stop at the city, or the country, or even the planet. He went up, past the atmosphere, past the limits of human perception. And he kept going. What he found broke him. We have his words, his last recorded testimony. He described layers upon layers of sky, peeling away like an onion. He described a world that was wrong, a fabric of reality that had been stitched together with lies. And then he described them, the mountains in the dark, vast, silent, ancient, things that had been sleeping beyond the edges of the universe, things that were never meant to be seen. But Rao saw them, and they saw him back. When the researchers found him, his body was trembling, unresponsive, but alive. His heart stopped. His lungs kept breathing. His eyes wouldn't close. They tried to bring him back, tried everything. Nothing worked. Then, at exactly 9 a.m., his biological functions ceased completely. He was pronounced dead, and at 10 a.m., his corpse began to speak. Here's where things go completely off the rails. That same day, 15 cities in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka reported sightings of strange lights in the sky, disks of white light unfolding in impossible ways. Some people collapsed, overwhelmed by nausea or euphoria. Others screamed that the sky was breaking apart. Then at 11 p.m., in the city of Kurnool, a message appeared, carved into 92 walls and doorways. Not written, not painted, manifested. It said, "The skies are cold, I am not alone. SCP-2498 or whatever is left of him is buried in room B204B, sealed behind layers of concrete and lead, but the radiation levels are still spiking, and sometimes on the old, unused intercom systems. His voice still comes through. The Foundation tells itself stories, that everything can be contained, that every monster has a cage, every nightmare a cure, that there's no such thing as a problem without a solution. But Rao learned the truth, and he left it behind for us. The skies are cold. I am not alone, and the wheel is still turning. Good evening. I am Dr. Arjun Ramakrishna Rao, former Foundation researcher. Current designation SCP-2498. Object class: neutralized. And this is the story of how I died. Twice. I was never one to fear the unknown. I had spent decades chasing the whispers of the unnatural, pressing my mind against the edges of things that should not be seen. When the Foundation approached me with Project Rainbow Body, I didn't hesitate. It was the next step, the only step. The Cold War was in full swing, and intelligence was the deadliest weapon. They weren't interested in spies anymore. No, they wanted something better, something inhuman. Remote viewing, the ability to see beyond physical limits, was the future of espionage, and they had spent years turning it from myth into science. I had the background they needed. Esoteric containment specialist. Decades of experience with psychic phenomena. A mind that had already brushed against the abyss more times than I could count. So I said yes. They started slow. Scopolamine, mescaline derivatives, drugs to crack open my mind, sensory deprivation, locked in a dark chamber, floating in salt water. My body dissolved into the void while the voices in my ear whispered things I shouldn't understand. Electroshock. They called it calibration. My body jerked and convulsed as controlled voltage rewired my neurons. When I emerged, my thoughts were sharper, clearer. I could see the test cards in the other room before they even flipped them over. They were pushing me, harder than any other subject. I volunteered for accelerated acclimatization, 40 hours, no breaks. The others called me insane, but I knew I could handle it, and I did. The first time I entered the viewing state, I thought I was dying. I felt my heartbeat slow. My limbs became distant, like they belonged to someone else. My vision turned to static, then to something else. A fractured reality. The walls dissolved, replaced by the overwhelming presence of everything. I saw beyond the room, beyond the building. At first, it was simple: a hallway, a locked room, an experiment running 2 floors above me. The doctors gasped as I described the scene perfectly. Then I went further. I saw the streets outside, the people moving, the patterns of their thoughts drifting like smoke. Then even further, I saw myself, hovering above my body, looking down at the wasted shell I had left behind. The thing they still called Arjun Ramakrishna Rao. I saw the wires connected to me, the screens flashing incomprehensible numbers. I saw the faces of the researchers, eyes wide with awe and fear, and in that moment I understood. I wasn't just seeing, I was leaving. The sessions blurred together after that. Each time I went further, I learned to drift, my awareness unshackled. I moved through solid matter, through walls and floors, through the city itself. With each test, the world bent to my vision. It wasn't enough. I needed to go higher, and so I did. I pushed my sight beyond the city, beyond the country. I saw people across the continent, faceless masses wrapped in the hum of their own thoughts. I heard whispers in languages I had never learned. I saw distant deserts, rivers cutting through valleys like open wounds. I saw the curve of the earth. I was above it all, and then I kept going. Through the atmosphere, past the sky, into the void. And that's when I saw something looking back. The sky is a lie. I know this now. The first time I pushed past the atmosphere, I expected weightlessness, silence, the vast indifference of space. But there was no emptiness, only layers. Like peeling the skin from an onion, I sank through them, one after another, each revealing another version of reality that should not have existed. It was all wrong. The clouds were too thick. The curvature of the earth distorted like a stretched-out reflection in warped glass. I moved through one sky, then another, but I was still inside. trapped. And that's when I saw them. They weren't stars, not exactly. They weren't meant to be seen. Shapes in the dark, vast and still, like mountains suspended in a black sea. I don't know how long I stared, but they must have noticed me because suddenly, they began to move. The sensation of falling snapped me back into my body. I crashed into my own skull like a train derailing at full speed. My breath caught in my throat, my vision whited out, and I felt my own skin for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Someone was shouting, "Rao! Rao, can you hear me?" I gasped, muscles locking, my fingers curling into claws. Every nerve in my body screamed. I was still moving. My eyes were open, but I wasn't looking at the room anymore. My vision slipped sideways, flickering between two places at once, the cold, sterile lab and the impossible dark where the mountains had begun to shift. Something was coming, and I had brought it with me. I woke up in restraints, not just the standard safety straps. They had bolted me down, shackles around my wrists and ankles, my head locked in place. The kind of setup they reserved for subjects undergoing severe psychotic breaks. Dr. Rajaputram hovered over me, his expression carefully blank. I had seen that face before when a test subject was about to be terminated. I tried to speak, but my throat was sandpaper. I could still feel it, the sense of something vast, something watching, its presence curling against the edges of my mind. He saw the look in my eyes. He knew. "You pushed too far," he said, "didn't you?" I swallowed. My lips cracked. I saw the sky. Rajaputram sighed, running a hand down his face. "Not the sky," he murmured. "The shell." I stopped breathing. He knew. He had known all along. They kept me under surveillance for 3 days. Every hour, someone came in to test my responses. Flashing lights in my eyes, simple questions, call and response. Checking for anomalous cognitive distortions. The polite way of saying, "Are you still human?" I wasn't sure anymore, because I could still see them, even with my eyes closed. Even when I forced myself to think of anything else, they were there. Great, dark shapes, moving ever so slightly, as if shifting in their sleep. And I could feel them feeling me back, a creeping sensation like a spider crawling behind my ribs. A whisper I couldn't quite hear. Something had changed. I wasn't just seeing anymore. I was calling. By the 4th day, I convinced them to release me. I played along, answered the questions, smiled at the right times, pretended I was getting better. They didn't know what to look for. How could they? They thought I had gone too deep, that my mind was fracturing. They didn't understand that something was bleeding through. That night, I went back to the deprivation chamber, alone. No sedatives, no oversight. Just me, the darkness, and the whispering static that had taken root in my brain. I had to know. I had to go back. The moment I entered the water, my body vanished. It was faster this time. I slipped past the walls of my flesh as easily as stepping through an open door. My sight expanded, stretching outward in all directions. I felt my body twitching in the real world, a faint, distant thing, as my consciousness rose. Through the building, through the sky, past the atmosphere, and this time I didn't stop. I went higher, further. The layers peeled away, revealing an endless ocean of black, stretching beyond anything I could comprehend. I was weightless, drifting in something deeper than space itself. The mountains stirred, one of them turned its head, and for the first time I saw its eyes. They say there's nothing beyond the sky. They're wrong. I saw it. Not the cold void of space, not the distant stars burning in the darkness. No, this was something else. A realm where the concept of space itself was meaningless, and the things that dwelled there, they weren't celestial bodies. They were watching me. The moment I locked eyes with the thing, I understood, or rather, my mind collapsed under the weight of something it could not comprehend. I had seen strange, terrible things in my time with the Foundation. Ghosts, dimensional fractures, entities that whispered your name in dreams. But this was something far older. A presence. A weight pressing down on me, squeezing my thoughts into something small and breakable. The mountain was alive. It had a face. but not in any way that made sense. A shifting arrangement of impossible geometry. 1,000 eyes opening and closing in patterns I couldn't understand. Its form was fluid, folding over itself, swallowing its own shape and becoming something new every time I blinked. And then it spoke. Not in words, not in sound, but in pure understanding. It didn't just communicate with me, it rewrote me. And that's when I realized I wasn't the first to see it. I was just the first to come back. I snapped back to my body like a rubber band snapping taut. Except I wasn't alone. I felt it inside me, coiled around my thoughts, its weight still pressing down, folding me in on myself. My body convulsed. I could hear the others rushing in, doctors, researchers, voices shouting in a panic. Jesus Christ, what's happening to him? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Not because my body wasn't responding, but because it wasn't mine anymore. They strapped me down again. More restraints, more drugs. But the drugs didn't do anything. I could feel them in my veins, but they weren't affecting me. My body wasn't processing them, because my body wasn't really alive anymore, not in the way it should be. On the second day, I stopped feeling hunger. On the third, I stopped blinking. By the fourth, I could see everything, not just the people around me, not just the facility. Beyond it, I saw people miles away, their thoughts flickering like candlelight. I saw their emotions like colors bleeding into the air, their fears curling around them like smoke. I saw myself from the ceiling, from the hallways outside, from everywhere at once. I was expanding. I was becoming something else. On the fifth day, I saw the sky break. It started as a ripple high above the Foundation site. A crack in the air, a distortion like heat rising off asphalt. No one else saw it, but I did, and I wasn't alone anymore. The whispering started that night. Not words, not exactly, just a presence, a knowledge bleeding into my mind. Something was coming, and I had brought it here. I wasn't just a man anymore. I was an anchor, a doorway, a beacon in the dark, and the things that lived beyond the sky had noticed. I tried to warn them. I told Rajaputram, told Ziegler, told anyone who would listen, but they just looked at me with the same expressionless stare. They didn't understand. They couldn't, not until it was too late. The first light appeared over Kurnool just before midnight. Then Bangalore, then Hyderabad, white discs of light, spiraling open in the sky like wounds in reality. People collapsed in the streets. Some cried out in ecstasy, others screamed in terror. The world was shifting. The mountains were moving, and I could feel them waking up. By dawn, the words had appeared, across dozens of buildings, scrawled in perfect raised lettering. The sky is cold. I am not alone. Not paint, not vandalism, manifestations. A message burned into the fabric of the world itself. I hadn't written it, but I had spoken it, and something had listened. I tried to fight it. I tried to pull myself back to close the door before it was too late. But the moment I reached out with my mind, I felt something push back. Something vast, something hungry. And in that moment, I realized it had already stepped through. My body died on February 12th, 1988. I remember the exact moment. The heart monitor flatlined, its monotonous wail carving itself into the walls of the observation room. I felt my chest seize, my limbs slacken, but my mind didn't follow. I was still there, watching them scramble around my corpse, barking orders, injecting chemicals that just flowed out of me as quickly as they entered. They didn't understand. I wasn't trapped in my body anymore. My consciousness had outgrown it, stretching across distances I couldn't comprehend. For the first time, I felt free. Free from the pain, the weight of flesh. My body was an empty shell, a relic of what I used to be. But I could see more than ever. In that clarity, I felt the mountains shifting. Their eyes fixed on me, immense and calculating. I was the worm on a hook, dangling in front of something far beyond human comprehension. The doctors kept working, their faces drenched in sweat. I heard them talk about shock ejection, about chemical neutralization, all futile gestures. Then Jocasta Simos entered. I saw the pain in her eyes, the terror barely hidden behind her professional veneer. We had served together, faced monsters and madness. But this was beyond either of us. She spoke to me, her voice wavering. "Arjun, can you hear me?" I responded not with my lips, but with the vibration of the room itself. "I hear you, Joe." The fear in her eyes sharpened. "What have you done?" I went up. "Why?" "To see." "To see what?" I paused. The words felt heavy, each syllable scraping against the fabric of reality. "The sky," I said, "the shell of the world." Her breath caught. She knew exactly what I meant. The room flickered, the light above us dimming. I could feel the gamma radiation bleeding from my form, bending the air, turning it heavy and toxic. The machines continued to hum, the wires embedded in my flesh now nothing more than lifeless veins. But I was alive, no longer bound by biological function, by breath or blood. Something had followed me back and I had become its anchor. As the days dragged on, the dreams started. Not mine, Joe's. She came to see me every day, her eyes ringed with sleepless nights. She described the gray spaces, the shadows that coiled and whispered in the corners of her vision. They were learning me through her, infecting her mind. She tried to resist, but I could feel the tendrils of those entities wrapping around her thoughts, warping them. I had crossed a boundary that no human was meant to breach, and now the things beyond were reaching back. On the 7th day, the incidents began. The reports flooded in lights in the sky, strange symbols appearing on walls throughout Andhra Pradesh. Witnesses described discs of light, unfurling like petals, burning their image into the retinas of all who looked up. "The sky is broken," they whispered. They were right. Rajaputram tried to isolate me, to contain the spread. Lead walls were erected. Concrete poured over the basement. The site sealed off. But containment was an illusion. I wasn't in that room anymore. I was everywhere. And still the mountains moved closer. Joe stopped visiting. She left a message for me in her absence, scrawled hastily on a monitor screen. "I miss you, I'm sorry." The words burned into my mind, more painful than the radiation that soaked through the walls. She had seen what I was becoming, and she was afraid. On February 17th, the attack came. It began with a white lorry, parked behind the Department of Architecture, hidden beneath a black tarpaulin. 5 men entered the facility, posing as maintenance workers. They weren't here to fix anything. They were here to steal me. The firefight echoed through the hall's gunshots, screams, the wet thump of bodies hitting the ground. I saw the shadows take shape around them, wrapping themselves in the folds of reality, twisting it. They reached my room. Dr. Rajaputram stood defiant, even as the barrel of a gun was pressed to his temple. They demanded I activate, to turn me into a weapon. I should have refused, but I didn't, I answered. As their leader barked commands, I felt the mountains stir. I felt the pressure of their gaze, the weight of their presence bearing down upon me, and I knew then that I was no longer Arjun Ramakrishna Rao. I was a gateway, a vessel for something vast and hungry, something that had waited eons to stretch its tendrils into our world. The men left, their mission complete, but I could feel the ripples they had caused. In my absence, the room continued to pulse with radiation, empty and silent, yet alive. And I, caught between life and death, body and soul, waited for the final collapse. There is no silence anymore, not even in death. I used to think that dying would bring peace, that the slow decay of my flesh would strip me of consciousness, dissolving my mind into the great quiet void. I was wrong. I can still hear them. Their whispers slither through the cracks of reality, curling around the bones of the world like vines wrapping around a rotting tree. They are awake now, and they are hungry. It started with the voices. They poured out of the walls, the radios, the old speaker systems, still wired into the abandoned corridors of Site-2498. Not just my voice. Other voices, too many to count. They spoke in tongues no human had ever learned, their syllables warping the air, bending light, corrupting thought. The few personnel still left inside tried to ignore them, pretended they were glitches in the system, a residual effect of the radiation seeping through the walls. But then the voices started calling them by name. The sky broke open on the 3rd night. It happened over Kurnool first, a jagged tear that stretched across the blackness, revealing something behind it. Something wrong. A new color bled through the fracture, a shade that had never belonged to this world. The people who looked at it fell to their knees, weeping and screaming in equal measure. Some clawed at their own eyes. Others simply collapsed, their minds snapping like brittle glass. By dawn, the lights had spread to 15 cities. Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mysore. The sky had become something else, something alive. And then came the writing, scrawled across concrete and steel, carved into the flesh of the unlucky few who survived the first night of visions. The skies are cold. I am not alone. The words repeated over and over, burned into walls, etched onto road signs, whispered from the lips of those too far gone to comprehend their own voices. They were my words, but I hadn't written them. I had only spoken them, and something had listened. Jo never came back. I think she knew that my mind wasn't mine anymore, that my body or what was left of it was just a husk, a placeholder for something greater, something waiting to be born. But she left me something, a dream, not hers, not mine, but ours, a vision of what comes next. In the dream, I am standing at the edge of the sky, not the sky as we know it, not the false blue ceiling we have spent our existence beneath, the real sky. It stretches out before me, endless and empty, a void where time is meaningless, where light moves like liquid, where the very concept of existence is an accident that should never have happened. And I am not alone. The mountains are here, not distant, not silent, not still. They are awake, their form shifting, folding over themselves in endless, chaotic motion. They have seen me. They have followed me back, and now they are waiting. I wake up, but I am still dreaming. The voices in the room do not stop. They no longer need my lips to speak. They are speaking through the air itself, through the fabric of reality, twisting sound into meaning in a way that is impossible for any living thing to understand. I know what they are saying. I shouldn't, but I do. They are calling to something bigger than me, something older than the stars, something that wants to come through. The final message arrives at 3:47 a.m., not through speakers, not through dreams, through stone and steel carved into the foundation of Site-2498 itself. 8 words. The skies are cold, I am not alone. But beneath them a new phrase, one that has never been spoken before. The wheel is turning, the storm is near. And in that moment I understand. This is not an accident. This is not a mistake. This was always going to happen. The only question left is, who will survive it? There is a moment before violence begins. A moment of silence, of stillness, a breath before the plunge. I felt it that night. A pressure in the air, a wrongness humming through the walls of Site-2498. Something was coming, and I was calling it here. The attack began at 12:47 p.m. A white lorry pulled into the university compound. Unmarked, unregistered, hidden under a black tarpaulin. 5 men walked in through the front entrance, posing as maintenance workers. They moved with precision, with purpose. They weren't here to fix anything. They were here to take me. I watched it unfold, not with my eyes, but with my mind. I could see them as they descended into the lower levels. Their movements sharp, methodical. I could hear their thoughts cold, clinical. They had done this before, many times, but they had never done this to something like me. They reached the first basement level. A receptionist, Sanvi Gupta, stopped them, asking for credentials. She never even had time to scream. A quick flash of metal, a stun gun pressed to her throat, and she collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. 2 men slipped into the women's restroom where Nurse Siddhi Agarwal was washing her hands. She saw the reflection behind her in the mirror, turned. One of them grabbed her. The other pulled out a knife. They needed her hand, not for a fingerprint, for the blood. I felt the pain as they cut her fingertip off. It wasn't mine, it wasn't real, but I felt it anyway. I was inside them now, all of them. The attackers, the doctors, the dying. I was everywhere, and I was waiting. They entered the second basement level through a concealed door, using Agarwal's access card and severed fingertip. That's where they ran into the first resistance. 4 on-site security personnel, a brief, brutal firefight. One of the attackers went down, his body crumpling to the ground. A hole punched through his chest, but the others were faster. 3 guards were left twitching on the floor. One of them, Agent Richard Parsons, managed to hit the alarm before a bullet split his skull open. His blood pooled against the cold concrete. By the time Site-36 received the distress signal, it was already too late. The men were inside, and they were coming for me. The facility fell apart in minutes. Doors breached. Personnel rounded up at gunpoint. Dr. Govind Rajaputram, Dr. Vinyas Ganeshan, and researcher Priyanka Acharya were dragged into the meeting room. Joe Simos and Franz Ziegler were missing. They had vanished into the chaos. The men didn't care about the others. They wanted one thing. They wanted me. They found observation room B204A first. The leader, a man in a black suit, his face hidden behind dark glasses, stood in front of the microphone. His voice was calm, controlled. SCP-2498, respond. I didn't answer. He waited, then nodded to one of his men. Rajaputram was brought in. Blood on his face, a gun to his head. Activate the entity. He didn't flinch. No. I wish I could say I resisted, that I refused, that I fought back. But when the leader spoke again, his voice crawling through my mind like a centipede burrowing under my skin, I obeyed. The walls trembled. The cameras flickered. The lights dimmed as if something enormous was blocking out the sun. And then I spoke. I don't remember what I said. I only remember the way the men reacted. Their bodies locked up. Their mouths hanging open as if something had reached down their throats and pulled their souls out by force. One of them collapsed, his mind simply shutting off. Another began to scream, clawing at his own face, peeling the skin back with fingernails that cracked and bled. The leader staggered, his hands trembling, his glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose. I saw his eyes. I saw what was inside him. He wasn't just a man, and he wasn't alone in his own skin. The attackers fled. They scattered like roaches, dragging their fallen with them, their plans in ruin. One group made it 2 kilometers before the Foundation's response team intercepted them. Rather than be taken alive, they bit down on cyanide capsules. The second group tried to escape by sea. They never made it. The last group vanished into thin air. Their bodies were never found. Only their shadows, burned into the asphalt as if they had been standing too close to an atomic blast. Inside Site 2498, the damage was irreversible. The containment seal was broken. The radiation spiked, and when the recovery team broke into experimentation room B204B, they found nothing. No equipment, no body, no trace of Arjun Ramakrishna Rao. But the radiation never stopped, and my voice never left the speakers. I was still there, just not in the way they expected. In the end, they sealed the basement with concrete, covered up the disaster, wrote it off. They knew they couldn't contain me, but they hoped they could bury me. They thought it was over, that I was gone. But Jo knew better. She had seen what I had become, and she knew what she had to do. She had to kill me again. I am everywhere, buried beneath concrete and steel. My body long dissolved into radiation and static. Yet still, I exist. I hear them whisper above me. They think they've won, that by sealing me away, by pouring me into the foundations of this place, they have ended me. But I am not gone, and neither are they. The mountains are awake, and they are watching, waiting. The wheel is turning. The storm is near, and Jo Simos is coming to kill me again. The door to room B204B is open for the first time in months. A figure steps inside, wrapped in layers of protective gear, the Geiger counter screaming in protest at the radiation that still fills the air. She moves slowly, cautiously, the weight of her own decision pressing against her spine like a loaded gun. Yo, my friend, the only one who still believes I can be stopped. The only one who still believes I need to be stopped. She lifts the recorder to her lips, her voice trembling. I know you're still here, Arjun. I do not answer. Not at first, not with words. Instead, I let her see. The walls begin to move, their surface rippling like liquid, as if something vast is breathing beneath them. The lights pulse, flickering in rhythmic patterns, forming words in a language older than speech itself. The air thickens, heavy with the weight of presence, the kind of presence that crushes the soul beneath its gravity. Jo does not flinch. She has seen too much to be afraid anymore. She steps forward, towards the empty cot where my body once lay. Her voice is steady now. I know what you are. The speakers crackle. The static shifts, bends, and I speak. Do you? She closes her eyes, swallows. I can feel the weight of the knife hidden beneath her coat. The cold steel pressing against her ribs. She already knows how this ends. She is just waiting for me to confirm it. I reach into her mind. I show her. I drag her under. The dream begins in a place outside time. We are standing together, alone, at the edge of the sky. The false blue shell of the world has cracked open, revealing the vast roiling ocean of black beyond it. The mountains loom, their forms twisting and folding, their eyes unblinking. The wheel spins, its spokes carved from the bones of dead gods, turning ever forward, grinding reality into something new. Jo stands beside me, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. She sees the spokes, the futures spread out before her, splintering in 1,000 directions, twisting and writhing like a nest of endless serpents. She sees the ones where she kills me. She sees the ones where she doesn't. She sees the price of both choices, and she understands. There is no salvation, no escape, only the turning of the wheel. She speaks through gritted teeth. You were never meant to survive this, were you? I smile. No. We wake. The dream collapses, shattering into 1,000 flickering points of light and static. We are back in room B204B, the air thick with the scent of ozone and burning metal. Jo does not hesitate. She lunges. The knife slashes through the air, its obsidian edge glinting in the dim light. It finds my throat, slices deep. A wound where no blood flows. Only light, only void. I fall into her arms. I do not fight. I do not resist. This is how it must end. Not with a battle, not with fire and steel, but with a single quiet motion. I feel myself fading, dissolving into the air, into the static, into the turning of the wheel itself. And in my final moment, I whisper to her, the last truth, the only truth. The skies are cold. I am not alone. Jo does not cry. She does not speak. She simply watches as my form disintegrates, as the light that was once Arjun Ramakrishna Rao is swallowed by the silence. She knows the truth now. She has seen it. But she does not tell the others. She never speaks of it again, because the moment the knife cut my throat, she felt it. The wheel kept turning, and the storm is still coming. As we draw our journey with SCP-2498 to a close, it's fascinating to delve into the myriad fan theories that have emerged within the SCP community. These theories not only enrich the narrative, but also showcase the collaborative spirit that defines the SCP Foundation's lore. One prevalent theory suggests that Arjun Rao's transformation was not merely an accident, but a deliberate attempt by the Foundation to explore the boundaries of human consciousness. Proponents of this idea argue that Project Rainbow Body was a front for more clandestine experiments aimed at transcending physical limitations. The anomalous events following Rao's detachment are seen as unintended consequences of tampering with the fabric of reality. Another intriguing theory posits that the shells Rao described are layers of alternate realities or dimensions. His ability to peel away these layers implies that our perceived reality is just one of many, each separated by a thin veil. This perspective aligns with other SCP entries that explore the multiverse concept, suggesting a broader interconnectedness within the SCP universe. Some fans speculate that the entities Rao encountered beyond the sky are higher dimensional beings that perceive our reality as a mere construct. His assertion that the sky is a lie hints at a simulated or artificial universe, a theme that resonates with other SCP narratives questioning the nature of existence. The SCP Foundation operates under the credo, secure, contain, protect. Its mission is to safeguard humanity from anomalies that defy natural laws, ensuring that the public remains blissfully unaware of these threats. In the case of SCP-2498, the Foundation's involvement raises ethical questions about the lengths to which it will go in the pursuit of knowledge and control. Project Rainbow Body exemplifies the Foundation's willingness to push ethical boundaries. The rigorous and often inhumane procedures employed to enhance extrasensory perception reflect a utilitarian approach, prioritizing potential benefits over individual well-being. Rao's subsequent transformation and the resulting anomalies underscore the unpredictable nature of such experiments and the potential consequences of overreaching. Furthermore, the Foundation's response to the incident sealing off the site and restricting information highlights its commitment to containment over transparency. While this approach maintains public order, it also conceals the truth, leaving room for speculation and mistrust. The richness of the SCP universe is a testament to the creativity and collaboration of its community. Each entry, theory, and discussion adds depth to the overarching narrative, inviting readers to explore complex themes and question the nature of reality. If you've enjoyed this exploration into SCP-2498 and wish to delve deeper into the enigmatic world of the SCP Foundation, consider subscribing to our channel. By doing so, you'll stay updated with our latest content, analyses, and discussions. Don't forget to hit the like button if you found this video insightful, and share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Your engagement fuels our journey into the unknown. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. Remember, in a world where the line between reality and the anomalous is often blurred, staying informed is your first line of defense. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and until next time, secure, contain, protect. SCP. Subscribe, comment, play.